to, he conquered most of the empire of any man that ever came. All that white is what he accomplished by the time he was 30. Sad part about that is he died at 32. And he didn't leave any heirs. And that's important because this area, believe it or not, also is part of Iran. A big chunk of it was. And he went all the way, he took over Egypt and about halfway into Europe. But the reason this is important because he didn't have any children. So when he died, he had 4 generals. And each one of these generals was given a section of this big empire. That's also important because in the Bible, in Daniel, it talks about the king of the north and the king of the south. And that's basically what we're going to talk about tonight. Now, the king of the north had a son. His name was Antiochus Epiphanes IV. Epiphanes actually means God. You know, I forgot the other part of it, but he considered himself a god. He got his power by intrigue, robbery, you name it. He didn't really fight many battles. Now, he did go to war with the king of the south, which was in Egypt, and they were actually kinfolk. All of them somehow were interrelated. In fact, the king of, I think it was Antiochus. Anyway, one of them, wife was an Iranian. I don't know what they would call them then, but she would have been an Iranian now. And when this happened, Daniel, over in chapter 8, if you want to look it up, I'm just going to read it. He's talking about, he's got this vision from God. It said, the male goat magnified himself exceedingly. It's 8:8. But as soon as he was mighty, a large horn was broken, and in its place came up 4 conspicuous horns toward the 4 winds of heaven. That would be your 4 generals that took over those areas. Out of one of them came forth a rather small horn, which grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the beautiful land. Now, the beautiful land was Israel. It grew up to a host of heaven and caused some of the host and some of the stars to fall down to the earth, and it trampled it down. It even magnified itself to be equal with the commander of the host, and it removed the regular sacrifice from him, and the place of his sanctuary was thrown down. Now, he's not talking about Satan and the angels here. He's talking about the high men in Israel, your high priest and all those folks, because, they're God's people. Now, the commander was God. And what he did when he went over there, and we'll get in that a little deeper, and he said, on account of transgression, the host will be given over to the horn along with regular sacrifice, and it will fling truth to the ground and perform its will and prosper. And I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to that particular one who was speaking, how long will the vision about the regular sacrifice apply while the transgressions causes horror, so as to allow both the holy place and the hosts to be trampled? He said to me, for 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the holy place will be properly restored. And we're talking days there. We're not talking years. Now, when the Antichrist comes, it talks about the same amount, but they will be years. 3.5 good, 3.5 not good. Okay, now I'm going to read you a little bit about little Mr. Antiochus here. Let's see. In the time between the return of Jewish exiles and the rise of the Roman emperors, the land of Judea was caught between 2 ruling powers, the Seleucid kingdom of Syria in the north and the Ptolemaic Egypt in the south. These kingdoms, both successor of Alexander the Great's broken empire, warred with each other for more than a century. They keep going back, trying to take each other's land from them. And let's see, I had another map here I was going to show you. Yeah. Now, you won't be able to see that very big. I couldn't blow it up. But see that little red spot? That's Israel. And if you'll notice, they're right in between Egypt and the Syria area. So they're caught in the middle of this fighting going back and forth. But at that time, they kind of intermingled with Israel. You know, they would go over there, you know, they didn't cause any trouble or anything like that. But whenever battle came up, Antiochus would run into Israel. He took bribes for the priest. It wasn't a matter of who was next, who had the most money. So by doing that, you know, he won favor, but he would also steal from their temple all the money that he needed to go get army against the other army. And that had happened this one time. So when he got down there and he figured out he couldn't win, the Romans stepped in. So he had to run back with his tail between his legs, and he went back to Israel instead of going back to Syria. Well, when he got there is when he started his little antics. It says, through most of this period, Judea remained in the periphery and was left alone. However, when Antiochus IV came to power, the Jewish people did not readily fit into the vision he had for his new empire. Alexander the Great, when he got this, they took up with the Greek culture. I don't know what it was about it, but they really liked that. So every time that they would go and take over more land, they would try to bring Greece in there some kind of way. You know, Greece is the one that had all the gods and goddesses and all that kind of stuff, and that's what they got their life, because really, basically, they weren't Greek. They were Macedonians. But they liked that culture so much that that's where they made their headquarters. And in fact, Antiochus' dad was the king of that area. And so what he did when he went in there, he wanted them to accept that culture. Well, you're not going to go into a Jewish nation and tell them, you know, we're going to swap all your gods with Zeus and Hera and all those different ones. So he goes in there and he says, this included embracing the Hellenistic way, which just is Greek, way of life and the worship of the Greek pantheon, especially Zeus. By taking the epithet, Epiphanes, it means God manifests. That's what his name was. He also claimed to be Zeus incarnate. A lot of these great kings would really get on the high horse because they'd win all these battles. So instead of being just a man who's militarily talented, they become a god. So, and if you're going to become a god, well, then you got to pick one that you came from. And he picked Zeus. Crazy, but that's what they did. He even, many of the pagan nations embraced and welcomed these policies, but in the land of Judea, they caused a cultural civil war, notably among the members of the high priestly families, because we all know the priest came from the tribe of Levi. Wasn't supposed to come from any other place. But Antiochus did it his way and bribed. If you had enough money, you could be high priest, which caused a lot of danger there, not only to the people, but to him too, because a lot of these priests that they would bring in through bribery would end up killing the king, take the throne from him. You know, kings and queens just amaze me. Nobody stays in power long because there's always somebody waiting, kick you off and move right in. Never lasts more than maybe 30 years if you're lucky. Some of them don't make it 10, and in his case, he didn't stay too long. All right, following the stories of intrigue, bribery, and military coup among the Jewish ruling class that could rival any TV station these days, Antiochus arrived in Jerusalem to find the people in an open state of revolt against him and each other. The chaos he found in Judea immediately followed a humiliating defeat in Egypt. That's where he went down to puff out his wings and think he was going to overrule them and get part of their empire. That's the other thing about kings and queens. They're never enough. They get this country, well, they're going to go over here. They got to get another piece of ground. And people have been fighting over empires ever since. I mean, right now, that's the reason Iran is pulling this little deal. They want the power. Let's see. Then what he did when he went back, and he was really, from the way I understand it, he was a really strange king. He went outside with the commoners and he played the flute for them and things like that. And obviously he couldn't play or they didn't like him because they would get up and leave him there. But he thought he was more than what he wasn't. So he got mad because he couldn't take over Egypt. They kicked his butt and he had to go back. Well, he got mad at everybody around him. You ever see a king rage like Nero did and had all the Christians killed? But I want to read you something else in Daniel. Now, that was Daniel 8. Over in Daniel 11. Now, this is a scripture that, if you want to know more about it, really goes into the detail of Alexander the Great. You know, remember the great big statue that Nebuchadnezzar had made up that he got from the dream? And each part of the body meant a certain kingdom. Well, they were the kingdom of Greece. And we know after the kingdom of Greece came the Roman Empire. Well, the Roman Empire were the legs, but the toes on the feet said it was a mixture of iron and clay, which means it wasn't very stable. It stood for 10 nations. So this was, you know, they were kingdoms, but they were weak kingdoms. That's what's going to be in power right before the time of the Antichrist, when he comes in. So he'll have his kingdom as well. But now, how much of it, I don't really know. You know, America's not mentioned. A lot of places aren't mentioned in the last days. You know, it may just be in that whole empire area that kept being taken over and over. Who knows? But I also know the capabilities of AI. I don't know if anybody saw it, but it was on Instagram, I think it was today. There is literally a company with AI that has made an image of Jesus. And he set it up to where you pay $2 to pray to him. Now, that's already here. And the guy had a picture of it. And you know who he copied for Jesus? The guy on The Chosen. The Chosen. Y'all been watching that? You know what I'm talking about? Well, that's the guy that he's using for Jesus. And you literally sign on, and they charge you $2 to pray to this Jesus. That's how the Antichrist is going to be all over the world. I mean, look what we do with it now. So be careful. That's the reason I'm like Rowdy. I believe it's closer simply for the fact of how far we are technically now. I mean, we can make images anywhere we want to, just about. Miracles, you know, they talk about the beast and then the high priest that's with him that do all these miracles. Won't be hard, not with the capabilities we have now. And that's why people are going to be fooled. I used to wonder, you know, well, Lord, how can everybody sign up for a man like the Antichrist and not know it? Right there. No. Yeah, I saw that. I wouldn't trust it, but all right. But, you know, the world of technology, I mean, it doesn't take a lot to make it look like magic or miracles, especially somebody that doesn't understand it very well. And AI right now, I believe, has got the capability of doing a lot of it if it's used in the wrong hands. That's one of those things that's good for the country, but is it? I don't know. Just be aware. Because once he comes... I'm sorry, Mike. I thought you knew. Anyway, artificial intelligence. That's all. Yeah. Huh? Oh, yeah. The phones. Well, I mean, look at it too.
We could be sitting in the same room and I can look up something, next thing you know, it pops up on Dan's phone, all these ads for the same thing. It's already here.
Oh, yeah, that part, yes. I'm talking about, though, when the Antichrist comes. It gets worse.
It's not over until the church is gone,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
but it's here.
But you don't want to get so caught up in it that you get involved into it. We have the capability right now. I mean, it's nothing to get all the information you need off of anybody anywhere. It doesn't take much. Yeah. It just, very well said, because that's what it is. I'm telling you this because at this particular time, people thought this was the Antichrist because of what he did. But if you stop and remember, in the Bible, there's always kind of like a prototype. Like with Jesus, when he was talking about Jesus coming, Jonah was a prototype because he spent 3 days and nights in the belly of a whale. That was representative of what Jesus was going to do. Antiochus, he's pulling the same stunt pretty much as what the Antichrist will do, just to a greater degree. And that's why we're talking about him. You won't hear much about him because he was a villain. But at the same time, he was the first one to desecrate that temple in the same way that the Antichrist is going to do. Now, in 11, it's talking here, let's see what my scripture was. I had it down here. All right, 21 through 30. Got to turn my page. All right, this is talking about Antiochus Epiphanes. In his place, and in the Bible, you'll notice they never mention a name. So it's not going to come out and say, this is Antiochus Epiphanes. You just have to, now my Bible's got it at the top, but that was added in. In his place, a despicable person will arise, on whom the honor of kingship has not been conferred, but he will come in a time of tranquility and seize the kingdom by intrigue. So he didn't come and get this kingdom by fighting for it. He did it through bribery, through intrigue, through buddy-buddy system. When the king of Egypt, they sat down and had dinner together while both of them are plotting against the other. So that's how he got his kingdom. Now, his brother was actually king, and rumor has it Antiochus was the one that killed him and took the throne from him. Now, that's debatable. It could have been anybody, but he was killed, and Antiochus took it over. The overflowing forces will be flooded away before him and shattered, and also the prince of the covenant. After an alliance is made with him, he will practice deception, and he will go up and gain power with a small force of people. In a time of tranquility, he will enter the richest part of the realm, and he will accomplish what his fathers never did, nor his ancestors. He will distribute plunder, booty, and possessions among them, and he will devise his schemes against strongholds, but only for a time. He will stir up his strength and his courage against the king of the south with a large army, so that the king of the south will mobilize an extremely large and mighty army for war. But he will not stand, for schemes will be devised against him. That's where the Romans came in. They literally stopped that battle before it got started, because I think they had some kind of land deals with the Egyptians at the time themselves. Those who eat his choice food will destroy him, and his army will overflow, but many will fall down slain. And as for both kings, their hearts will be intent on evil, and they will speak lies to each other at the same table. But it will not succeed, for the end is still to come at the appointed time. Then he will return to his land with much plunder, but his heart will be set against the holy covenant, and he will take action and then return to his own land. At the appointed time, he will return and come into the south, but this last time it will not turn out the way it did before. So he's already pulled this 2 or 3 times, but this last time it didn't show up. For the ships of Kittim will come against him, which are the Romans. Therefore he will be disheartened and will return and become enraged at the holy covenant and take action. And he will come back and show regard for those who forsake the holy covenant. Now he's mad. And who's in between the 2 countries? Israel. So he goes back with this. He's angry at what happens, but he takes it out on the Jews. Now he gives them an opportunity to join him and be as Greeks as he is. But then we've got the diehard Jews that won't. So what he did is he went in there, he made them ban all circumcision, forbade them to follow the law, got rid of a lot of their written work, because they wrote down everything. You know, they had their little Torahs and everything else. He got rid of all that. But the very worst thing he did, he went into the temple and set up the god Zeus inside the temple, and he started burning sacrifice of pigs on the altar. Just another big slap in the face of the Jews. But they couldn't defeat him. So he had his way, and that's what he did. Now this is the good part. There was a group of Israelites, and this is what I don't understand. The book of Maccabees, 1st and 2nd Maccabees, is found in every Bible except the Protestant Bible, and then there's another one. But most Orthodox Bibles have it. And why it doesn't is beyond me, because it was the war between the Jews and this guy to get their country back, because they were the ones that had to go in and cleanse the temple because they were of the priestly line. And I've got this on them if I can find it here. Now the Maccabees came from the priestly line. It was a Jewish rebellion against their Greek and Syrian oppressors, and this was in 167 to 160 BC, which is before Christ, as well as a rejection of the Hellenistic compromises in their worship. So he walked in, he said, you're going to do this, and we're going to get rid of all this, and you're going to become a Greek whether you want to or not. You know, and you can imagine somebody coming in here during our worship and everything and said, whoa, that's it. Can't have this anymore. You can't have your Bibles anymore. You can't have any of this. And if we're not big enough to stop them, well, you can stand up, but you might be killed. But I'm saying at that time, that was their choices. But the Maccabees started with just a father and a son. And they rounded up some other Jews that were really with God and wanted this to stop. And they took up a revolt against him. Now, you got to remember, he hadn't been revolted against by a small country like that before. All right, let's see. The Old Testament closes the book of Malachi, covering events to roughly 400 BC. After that, Alexander the Great, he came and he conquered everything. Then all of Palestine was tolerant of the Jewish religious practices. Now, Palestine was still Gaza area. And before Gat, it was the Philistine area. So that's always not been a part of Israel. It was supposed to be. But then all this happened, and that's why they have the war between Gaza and Israel now over one little piece of land there. Faithful Jewish opposition had been an undercurrent all along, but Antiochus' overt act of desecration brought it to the surface, and the result was the Maccabean revolt. Mattathias, a Jewish priest, led the organized resistance along with 5 sons, John Gotti, Simon Thassi, Elazar Avaron, Jonathan Aphus, and Judas Maccabeus. Maccabeus comes from the Hebrew word for hammer. I thought that was kind of cute. Matthias started the rebellion, the father, by preventing a Jew from sacrificing to a pagan god and then killing an officer of the king. So he started the revolt. From there, they conducted guerrilla warfare against the Seleucids, but much of their wrath was also directed against their fellow Jews who deserted God. You'd be surprised if you ever pit people like that, how many will give in and submit, and how many will take a stand. It always happens. Hopefully that wouldn't be very many go to their side, but you'd be surprised. Let's see, the rebels tore down pagan altars, circumcised boys, and forced the Hellenized Jews to become outlaws with no rights or legal protection. So they not only fought against Antiochus, but he fought against those that gave in to him. Because circumcision was the sign of the covenant God gave to Abraham. And he literally said, you're not doing that anymore. Can you imagine something you had been taught from the days of Abraham to all this time? Somebody walks in and says, can't do that anymore. Because if you weren't circumcised, that means you were cast out of Israel. You didn't have part with it anymore. So we're not talking just a cut. We're talking about cut off from God. And that's why it was so serious. See, then upon his death in 166, his son Judas Maccabeus took command of the rebellion. He saw himself as a leader like Moses or Joshua or Gideon. Under the leadership of Judah, the rebellion continued successfully, and the Maccabees, as they were called, were able to capture Jerusalem and rededicate the temple in 164 BC. That's where the festival of Hanukkah comes from. That's another reason I don't understand why it's not in our scriptures. But Hanukkah is the celebration of the revolt of the Maccabees. The Maccabees, once they kicked him out, it was their duties as high priest were the only ones that can go in and cleanse the temple. And they had to do that. They couldn't leave it desecrated like that. Let's see. In spite of the fact that Judas never started the rebellion, nor he even saw it to its completion, he considered to be the central figure in it. Sometimes his family are called the Hasmoneans. I don't know if you've heard that or not, but it's just a name that the Jews had given to them. They are also referred to the Maccabees after Judas, and the revolt they led is referred to as the Maccabean Revolt. Now, those are things in history they don't teach you in church. I'm sorry they don't. You know, if you do Bible theories or anything in college of it, you're going to find out a lot of this stuff. I know not everybody is interested in history, but the old saying is if you don't know your history, you are destined to repeat it. And it's going to do it. I mean, you can look at what's happened to what the Israelites went through and watch us. We're doing the same things. We started out as God's country. We started doing the right thing, and then slowly each generation we got back to, well, there's no God. Let's take prayer out of schools. Little things. And what did we do? We became accustomed to it. Why didn't we just rise up and one woman took prayer out of school? One woman. Now that should shame us if nothing else. But the good thing was on that, I don't know how many of you knew that, but when she died, her son didn't give her much of a burial. Her son became a Christian. I thought that was just absolute thank you, Lord moment. He did the very thing that she taught him all his life to not be, and he became a Christian. So you know it probably galled her if she'd have known it. Huh? Yeah? Always.
She took the 2 P's out of school, what she done.
Huh?
She just took the 2 P's out of school, what she done.
What?
Prayer and paddling.
Paddling.
Yeah, you can't explain to kid now.
I don't think she had any to do with that. She no, life. I mean, look at it. It was different just in our generation. Yeah, parents. You know, this generation, they think, well, we're going to raise our kids this way. Well, the kids that they raised, they came up in the next generation. Well, we're not going to be as hard on our kids as our parents were. And it just, it got to the point that, and then child abuse is what caused the paddling deal mainly. You know, back then, people would whip you, but then you're always going to have those that go too far. And when they do, here go the laws. They change the laws, and you can't even discipline your own child. So that's why I said, if we're not careful and don't know what happened before, that's going to happen in the next generations down the road somewhere, because it always comes back. Just like this guy right here. He was the first and only one to go in and desecrate that temple like he did. But who's coming to do it again? The very same way. The Antichrist. So when you start seeing peace everywhere, look out. Because that's when he's not going to rise up in the middle of a war. He's going to come up and make peace. How do you think that he's going to win Israel over? Because they're going to think he's great at first. He makes a treaty with them the first 3.5 years, and everything's hunky-dory until he rises up. Satan decides it's time to show his ugly head, and the last 3 years are going to be literal hell on earth. But thank God we're going to be raptured out. But we need to think about those that won't. Now, the Bible does say, and I dug thoroughly, there will be those that are saved during the tribulation. But you got to remember, in the days of the tribulation, you can't buy and sell food. You can't have a job. You can't do anything without whatever that mark is. Yep. You know, and that again, I heard over there in England that they're now setting them up that you can't get a job until they put this little silicone chip in your hand. Whether that's it, who knows? It's just a step toward it. So it's not like it's, back in my day, somebody said that. We thought she's crazy, lived on Mars or something, because that was farther than we knew of technology. Just didn't hear of it. Yeah, exactly. But these days, you can see things like that and say, well, yeah, I could see how that would work. I mean, think about it. If you've got a young family at home, especially, maybe babies, you're going to do whatever it takes to get food and milk and whatever you need. And you're not going to be able to. So it's going to be hard to resist them. If you do, you're going to be beheaded. or killed in some way. Because everybody that makes it through the tribulation will be under the altar praying to God, saying, Lord, when are you going to avenge us? Those are the people under the altar in Revelation, those that made it through. Go ahead.
I was watching a preacher on TV, and he was talking about the mark, and he was saying that in the Bible it says the mark will be on the hand or on the forehead. It didn't say it would be in.
Good.
That's what he was saying, that he said, you know, people are worried about these chips that they're putting in their animals and they're putting in their babies and all this stuff, and he said, the Bible doesn't speak about in, it says on, and there's a big difference between in and on,
Oh, yeah.
so.
The only thing about being on is going to have some way